Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Jackson. I called you Professor Jackson, actually, throughout the week. Well, you weren't there, so I had to create a presence for you.
Oh, my goodness. I am so bummed that I missed. That's the first workshop I've ever missed.
Ever.
That's what I'm saying, ever.
So I'm going to catch you up. I'll catch you up a little bit today.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, first of all, I take a phrase that you use, and we should say hello to all of our listeners, I think.
Hello, Happy New Year to everyone, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm still using this diagram where I just draw a circle and say activities, and then another circle inside where I say unique ability, and then what's not unique ability is crappy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm leading up to. And I said, now, Professor Jackson has a saying that every day we use up all our time.
That's exactly true.
Did you ever notice that there's never a surplus at the end of the day that you can carry over to the next day?
Mm-hmm.
So time doesn't work like capitalism. You can't build up a surplus.
That's true.
Yeah. And then I said, and this is me tagging along on Professor Jackson, all your time every day is filled with one kind of activity or another.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Our attention is what it is. Our attention is engaged 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. That's what I've really.
That's the second one. That's the second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to add that to your first one.
Okay, sorry to jump ahead there. Yeah.
So I'm going to add that to your first one, and it's really because it always draws a laugh. Yours, whenever I say it, always draws a laugh. But I said, and yet, if I watch people's behavior, it doesn't indicate that they recognize this fundamental truth.
Yes, that's true.
So what have you noticed? What have you noticed when you don't pay proper respect to this fundamental truth that every day we use up all of our time? What?
Yes. Well, it's more, the thing that I noticed about it is that it's not that we're able to, it's not like our attention needs a rest or our attention needs, it turns off for a period of time. Our attention is 100% engaged at all times. And that
possibly even while we're sleeping.
Yes, exactly. Dreaming. That's exactly right.
It's certainly a form of attention, I think.
Yeah. And but I had an interesting distinction over the last couple of weeks that we have to talk about attention deficit disorder and those words as a diagnosis, but because I've been thinking about the, in terms of getting proactively the things that you want to get done requires a intentional application of your attention to whatever you want, to whatever you're looking at. And that where I look at it, that often what I end up with is not so much an attention deficit that I have, but it's an intention deficit that I have. That I'm not overtly crystal clear on what the single intention that I have for this period of time is.
Yeah.
Because I often have a quick start.
Yeah.
As a quick start, I have this unlimited number of things that are vying for my attention. Right. Yeah. And what I have to
certainly there's a lineup.
Yes, that's what I mean. Absolutely.
I don't know if it's an infinite lineup, but it's there's never an absence. There's never an absence. There's never a gap. It
feels like an infinite lineup. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so getting to the point where I am crystal clear, it's funny how I often reflect on my report card that we always talk about, that Dean's able to achieve excellent results with what seems like little effort. Imagine if he applied himself. And I started thinking about, what does that mean to apply yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And how I love acronyms, and I started about this. I think what really would be apt to describe what applying myself would mean is to get to a point where I can, so the essence of it would be attention precisely placed, it would be the first starting off, that if I can place my attention where I intend to, where I want it to be, mm-hmm. to accomplish the things that I want, the what's that I want, in finding mm-hmm. the who's that can make those things happen. Mm-hmm. That's really the thing. But it's the attention that's the crown jewel of mm-hmm. that's the thing that if you can address your intention, you've done a masterful job, in my observation, of corralling your attention with an environment that is allows you to be a quick start, but also takes care of the big rocks. Like, you've got 150 workshop days. Is that what it is? Or,
well, yeah, there's two ways of looking at that. One is my own workshop days, which is has been coming down over the years as we've had other coaches. So total this year we'll have 500 workshop days for the company, and 45 of those are mine, and then the other coaches take care of 450 or
I got you. Okay.
So yeah.
So in recent years, how dramatically has that come down in recent years for you?
It came down when I started the 10 times program, because within the first year, so I started. You were in the first group, the first 10 times group, and then over the first year, I probably added three more workshop groups, and that gave me, for a full year, that would be 12.
Yeah.
But during that time, I was also letting everyone know that from the date of our very first 10 times workshop till 1 year later, they had a decision whether they were going to go into the 10 times workshop. This is my master's. It was called the master's program. And we had about, I think about 300 or 400 individuals. And at the same time, I was working with Kathy Davis. And I told her, a year from now, you have to be in charge of creating the new 10 times workshops, and you'll figure out how to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I said, and she met with me and, kind of established, she asked the question, if I was doing a good job, Dan, what would it look like to you? And, I gave her some specifications, and, in order to make new workshops interesting, what are the checkpoints you have to have for a new workshop? So there was this downloading process. And then at the end of that first year, it was July to July, from 2012 to 2013, we then established a quarter from July until October of 2013, where for free they could test out with another coach. They could test out with another coach. And, so that was free. So they weren't charged for that. So they got back that year, they got 5 quarters. instead of, charging them for just the year. We gave them an extra quarter just to test out. And then the question was, at the end of that quarter, were they going to go with that coach, or do they want further discussion about possibly another coach they wanted to go to at the master's level, or, were they going to come into the 10 times program, or, were they not going to be in the program anymore?
Right.
And so that was established with one impact filter to Kathy. And it happened the day after my very first 10 times workshop, and you were in it. And I lie. I'm telling a lie here. It wasn't the next day. It was the day after the next day, because the next day I had a master's workshop, and it was essentially all the people from a master's group who hadn't come to the 10 times workshop. They came to the 10 times workshop, and it was like the 10 times workshop was like going 100 miles an hour, and the master's workshop was like hitting a brick wall, because I had creamed off all the,
all the spark plugs.
All the spark plugs. We had no more juice.
Right.
And I think that they were kind of in a state of shock, and there were all sorts of factors at play here. That we were thinking. But the next day, so it was a Monday, was the spark plug day. The Tuesday was without spark plugs. And Wednesday, I said, okay, right off the bat, I know I can't put up with this for more than a year. And a year from now, I want to be completely free from all non-spark plug, plug workshops. And it worked. I mean, it really worked. And we got enough of a transition in that year that there was no loss of cash flow for me, because it had grown. The 10 times program had grown over that year. And
right.
But it was one impact builder where I just laid out the whole progression, and she just took it and ran with it. And then as we got closer to the date, I put out two rules that one is that I did not want to know anything she was doing in the master's classes and the signature classes. I would never be in any of those classes. I would not watch what the other coaches were doing, and I did not want her to tell me what she was doing, because I didn't want her to feel that I was looking over her shoulder or that I was having any judgments about what she was doing. I said, it's yours to master, and I give you complete creative freedom to do it the way you think, and any way you want to arrange it, anything you want to do with the tools that we already have on the shelf, you can do that. If you want to invent some new tools, you go ahead and do that. But you have to be in every one of my workshops going forward at the 10 times level, so you can see what I'm doing at the lead end. So you complimented me on having a masterful way of doing it, but one of the things I've needed to do, Dean, in order for you to make a comment like that, is that I have to have, really highly intentional interventions in terms of communication with team members who will get totally what it is that I want to achieve. So it has to happen fast. One of the things, if the intentionality sort of the handover, my intentional hand, if it doesn't happen fast, then I'm in a lot of trouble.
I just look at that, like, it seems like in my observation of it, that you come into the year with, a very good percentage of your year already in place, the big pieces. Like I was looking at, I've already got on my calendar right now all of the podcasts that you and I are doing for the next 12 months. For the next 12 months, already laid out for us.
Matt, I have 9 other series, and that's true for them too. So I have one person, they have to move everything at the end of each month. They have to add another month to the rolling 12. So we have a rolling 12 schedule. And then all my workshops are scheduled for the next year, and then all my book creation is scheduled. All my video sessions are scheduled. And the reason is, well, number one is that it's just possible, So I said, well, it's possible to do that. And someone else is in charge of it. So why don't they just go ahead and put it in there? And then someone else is in charge of my schedule anyway. And going back to your point at the beginning of the discussion is I'm going to use up all my time for the year.
Yes. And that's the thing, right?
And my attention is going to be fully engaged with whatever that year brings.
Yes. And
I think these are fundamental truths. I mean, I think the two that you have identified here are just, and they're so simple and they're almost so humorous. People say, well, of course that's true. And I said, well, that's really funny because your complaints and your criticisms and your beating yourself up don't indicate to me that you actually understand the importance of those two truths.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not saying that to you. I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying that.
No, I get it.
Well, I don't have enough time. I said, well, you had absolutely all the time you're ever going to get.
Yeah, that's the truth. And you literally can change anything starting, right from this moment. Everything going forward is completely 100% in your control. So,
but it's the intention thing that I think you put your finger on. The actual. So, what is an intention that's over and above attention? So we got the word attention and we've got the word intention. And what's involved in intention that's not there in attention?
I think that it goes back to wanting what you want. Yep. I think that's part of it, right? Knowing what you want is certainly a big part of it. That if you're clear on what you want, and you can articulate that in a way that you're creating that future, right? You're creating that vision of the bigger future that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And you can, then throw your hat over the fence kind of thing. I think like what you were saying with, you started talking about free zone frontier. I think at least 2 years before you actually, before it actually launched, or maybe 18 months at least, you started saying, just putting it out here, April of whatever the year was, that's, it's starting then, and it's, going to be the new level to continue with me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But you set that out there, and now everything then has to fall into place.
That one is the clock is ticking on that one right now because I'm inside 3 years, so it's the end of 2022 is the cutoff point, and you can start feeling the movement inside the company backstage towards, well, who are the coaches who are going to be the 10 times coaches, and how does the program have to be so that people, they're hitting this for the first time, as coaches. So what's the training have to be? So my way of getting something started, as far as where it involves teamwork with other people, is I just put the date in the calendar and I said, next day after this date, I'm not involved in this activity. So your job is to figure out, how someone else takes over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, so I think that's part of the intention is a declaration.
Time, I think a calendar date is very much a crucial part of intentionality, I think.
That's the part of throwing your hat over the fence. That's the part of saying, there it is. I'm marking this calendar. I'm marking this on the calendar that here it is. That's my intention, and I think even that alone helps move things in that right direction.
Yeah, and I think you have a vision primarily of who you are at that date. People talk about goals, and I've been around goal setting as a activity that I would sell since 1974. So I'm in my fifth decade of getting people to set goals. And I've thought a lot about goals, and I've read books about goals and everything. But more and more, my simple explanation to myself what my goals are is simply a picture that I have of myself at a future date where I'm better in terms of my capabilities, but also the results that are coming from all my activities are much, they're much bigger. And I have that picture of myself, and then I relate it back to who I am right now. And I say, well, who I am right now doesn't fill in that picture. There's some changes that have to be made.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the time thing. The way I'm using my time today does not satisfy the requirements for who I see I'm supposed to be in the future.
Yeah, it's really, the thinking about, you could trace the seeds of things in the books that you've written. But, when you think about wanting what you want, is giving people, permission to want and not have to justify it, but to have the clear, the ability to see clearly what you want. And then you move into the 4 C's as a way of that's the first step of getting those things, is committing that you're going to have that. This is what I want. And then throwing the commitment out there and knowing that once you set the date out there, that now you've got to have the courage to let the team, figure it out.
Yeah, I just, before we came on, and a bit remiss on this, I could have done it yesterday, but I didn't, because I didn't recognize what was available to me time-wise yesterday. But I sent you 2 PDFs, and they're the 2 central exercises that we did in the 10 times workshop. So I wanted you to see what they look like. And I don't have the blank PDF, so you can do them, but you can see them. And one of them is, and it relates right back to our very first discussion at La Select Bistro, when the whole concept and the theme of our podcast here, the Joy of Procrastination, came up, and it's called Simplifier or Multiplier.
Oh, I see.
And it's very, very interesting because this one really took off, and it's the very last hour of the 10 times workshop for December and January. And what I do is, I said, I've noticed over the years of watching entrepreneurs that some entrepreneurs seem to be good at one particular thing, and some entrepreneurs seem to be good at a completely different activity.
Yes.
And the 2 activities are, some entrepreneurs are great simplifiers. They take complex things and they make them very simple.
Yes.
Other entrepreneurs take simple things that someone else has already created and they multiply it out into the world. An example I would give is Ray Kroc with the McDonald brothers. The McDonald brothers were kind of simplifiers, but Ray Kroc was a multiplier. So the McDonald brothers had a couple of restaurants in Southern California, which they had the idea for quite a long time that they would take this franchise-wise across the country, because there were already examples of franchise organizations. White Castle hamburgers had been out there, and Howard Johnson had been out there. So there, Holiday Inn had been out there. So there were these franchise organizations. In the United States, because of its big distances and its transportation networks, lends itself to franchise organizations. I mean, it's just a country that's made to franchise. But until Ray Kroc joined the team, there was no possible. Same thing with Starbucks. Howard Schultz was an employee for Starbucks wholesale coffee company. And then he went to Venice. He talks about an experience of going to Venice and sitting in the plaza, St. Mark's Plaza, and just noticing the incredible enjoyment people have of drinking coffee. And this didn't correspond to anything he had ever seen in the United States. And he said, we have to bring this Italian type of espresso drinking cafe experience to the United States. And we have the beans, we have the coffee beans, but we don't have the delivery system. We don't have the actual cafe
third place. Right.
Yeah. So he's not the creator of Starbucks coffee, because there was a company that already had the beans. They were roasters. They were already selling beans. But his whole thing was, well, how do we put this in a form where it multiplies right over? So whoever created the original beans, the wholesale beans thing, was the simplifier, and Howard Schultz was the multiplier. So we have Ray Kroc. He was the multiplier for the McDonald brothers, and Howard Schultz was the multiplier for the whoever put the whoever started the whole. They were high quality roasted beans, so they were something already better than other beans, but they weren't going anywhere.
Yes. And now he's created this the structure and the system to do it. It's so funny. I'm 100% a simplifier. I mean, that's really from the moment you start talking about this, that's my.
Well, I'm a 100% simplifier too.
Yeah.
You and I together, if we spend a lifetime together, we just never have to go outside.
That's right.
We'd order in.
That's exactly right. We would order in.
We'd order in from the ghost kitchen.
That's exactly right. I mentioned to you that we probably need a housekeeper, but I don't know. Well, but Joel Zadak, one of his clients, had a comedy special on Netflix, and he was talking about just that, how it's come now that we're so accustomed to things being simple and on demand now that we can't. It's never enough. Prime Now is the thing. If you live in the city, you can get it in 2 hours, but we're gonna get impatient with that soon enough.
Yeah. Well, it's very funny. I was coming. There's been a Air Canada. I fly to Chicago on Air Canada, so I had 3 workshops, but my last one was on Thursday. So normally I would fly home on Thursday night, but they've rearranged the schedules, and I think it has to do with the winter push that Air Canada is using a lot of planes to get their half of the adult Canadian population goes to Florida or to Arizona or to Palm Springs or to Maui during the winter time, and I think we're getting shortchanged at the normal flight. So it's either a 6:30 flight, which is too early for me to end a workshop at 5 o'clock and be over at the airport, or it's 8:30, which is actually 9:30 in Toronto, and I get to bed about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. So Babs and I just stayed at the house overnight, and then we took an early morning flight. And as I was walking through the, security up on AWS, this is Amazon. AWS, they coined this new thing called AWS. And the headline, and it took over half a wall, the headline said, "You want it now, you want it all, and you want it right now." And I said, boy, Boy, there's the national anthem for Cloudlandia.
That's exactly it. You are right. And that's exactly what he says. That's the thing. Remember, I was so enamored by that quote that he said that nobody ever asks him what is not going to change in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. That he knows for certain that people are going to want as wide a selection of products as they can get. They're going to want them as fast as they can get them, and they're going to want the best price.
And they're really unhappy that it wasn't here a minute ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's no happiness in this world. There's an insatiable appetite.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You can't,
so back to Joel Zadek. And his. I saw him, by the way. He was over for dinner, and your presence was missed. Your presence was missed.
Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing him, and you and everybody. But this particular, I mean, we've seen Joel's really coming along. We saw that Ronnie Cheng Netflix special, which I'll tell everybody listening. This guy is funny, and that was Joel produced that show, and we went and saw his movie that he did with Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish,
like the boss. So that opened up Friday, and Luba and I went to see the movie.
Joel is like a real quiet behind the scenes.
Right.
You get a feeling that he's going to have hundreds of productions out there without anyone knowing about it, because that's not really his shtick. I think he just enjoys working with talented people.
Yes, exactly. And so that's, and of course, the interesting thing is, I think his company is called Artists First, which is his, what a great, do with the name, who do you want to be a hero to? That's
Artists First.
Artists First. It's so great.
Yeah.
So, I like you could see your influence, in all that's happening.
It's very interesting. Before he was in 10 times. He was in the signature program in Los Angeles. So he had, started with another coach in Los Angeles. And he asked if he could do a call with me. And, and I didn't know him. I had to be introduced, because there's, the vast majority of entrepreneurs who are in strategic coach, they're not in my workshops, so I don't really meet them. As a matter of fact, Adrian Duffy, who's our second longest coach, she's 25 years this year as a coach. She's 30 years as a client, but 25 years as a coach. And we just happened to coincide in Chicago one day. I was there, was not coaching. She asked me to come into her workshop, and she introduced me to 3 strategic coach clients who had been in the program 23 years, and this is the first time I'd met them. And I take a great deal of pride in that, because it means that it's not about the personality; it's about the concepts and the tools. It's one of my tests. But anyway, a call was set up with Joel, and I talked to him, and I could tell right off the bat that he calls himself a talent manager. I mean, that's basically what his role is. But he's really a coach. He's a career coach for very talented individuals. But he's zeroed in on comedians, especially, because he had done stand-up himself. He knew the ropes as far as the industry goes, and he knew the ups and downs, the insecurities, and there's a lot of luck in the entertainment world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Luck and timing. It's timing.
Part of the thing. Luck. I mean, in my, just in my interactions with him, which has really only been at your house and at workshops with him, just in talking about what he's got going on and how he's sort of moving into packaging things for his artists to come and make the whole thing happen is really progressive. Seems it's awesome.
Well, he's got a very, and he's working on himself too. It's really interesting because his opportunities are getting bigger.
Yes.
The impact of the work that he's doing with these artists is getting bigger and more powerful. Yeah. But he's got a very interesting idea, that's outward growth. Every quarter where he has outward growth, during the next quarter he has to have inward growth. In other words, he has to get simpler inside of himself. And it's very, very interesting to watch this process. And, and I think that there's a kind of a, going back to the starting point of our talk today about Professor Jackson's 2 fundamental rules of time, namely that every day we use up all our time, and all the time that we use up, we give full attention to. Yes. Would that be?
That's exactly it. That is true.
Yeah, those are the 2 fundamental rules. Professor Jackson's 2 rules of the time universe.
This is great. I love that. Yes.
No. Hey. I learned at the feet of the master. What can I say? What can I say here? So, but the big thing about it is that I think a third element here is that you have to be pushing outward and use your imagination to have a picture of yourself that's always big. So part of your time that you spend each day should be related to a future picture of yourself. I mean, there's daily activities that we have to do. And we have to face something, and I just wanted to introduce one of the things that we did in the 10 times workshop of the past week, and that is I introduced your 2 rules. Well, the first rule and the second rule has been clarified in this phone call. The interesting thing here is, Dean, that I said, for every picture you have of yourself of the future, that's going to entail time in the future. So a day in the future, you're bigger and better. You're a better person, and you're producing bigger results. But that's within the same laws that are operating today. Namely, you're going to be using up all your time on that day. And what you're going to notice, you're using up time in a very different way than you're using it right now, because some of the ways you're doing it now isn't going to make the cut.
Right.
Because you're doing things today which are related to your past self, someone who you used to be, and that's a smaller who didn't even really produce the kinds of results you are when you're at your best right now. There's part of you that's not really producing the best of who you are right now. And so there's a fight between your past self and the image that you have of yourself in the future self. Something's got to give.
Yes. That's really, but when you get to a point where you're setting intentions, I think that's what happens is wants. That's the progression, I guess. That wants turn into intentions. Yeah.
Well, my latest book, Always Be the Buyer. The best buyer for you. The best buyer for you is actually who you're going to be, in the future. And that is either that buyer who is you is either buying or not buying certain things that you're doing right now.
Oh, that's interesting. I was thwarted in that I had allocated my flight to Chicago as the time for reading, experiencing the book the way it was meant to be. One flight from Orlando to Chicago, and then I didn't take the flight, so I haven't. I've looked through, but I haven't had a chance to really read the whole book, but I have had something that a thought that is an expansion of a thought that I've shared with you, that I wonder if it jives with what you're talking about in Always Be the Buyer. And if you remember, the thought that I had about this idea that when you approach a company or a business from the receiving dock, you're met with welcome arms, right? And I realized that, I was using as the opposite to that the shipping dock, that all people are out, excuse me, competing with other vendors, waiting to get a purchase order to then maybe someday deliver to the receiving dock what you promised that you can deliver. And they're not taking any action or doing anything until they get that purchase order, and they're selling the purchase order, right? And I thought about it, that there's probably not a lot of businesses that would not be open to, if you were delivering the goods that you're trying to get them to write the purchase order for, that they would pay you on the spot at the back door with the goods in your hand.
Yeah. Well, of course, because, think of how much happens in the world on the basis of consignment,
Yes.
We'll give you our product to sell, and when you sell it, we'll get paid when you get paid.
Yeah.
Right. It's Cyrus McCormick, actually. It's Cyrus McCormick. Well, but it was really interesting. I just had an image in my mind. If you take a factory, and let's say the shipping docks are on one side of the building, and the receiving docks are on the other side of the building, and you go out a half a mile each way. So you go a half mile out from where the shipping docks go. Trucks take the stuff and ship it out. And on the other one, you have the receiving docks, a half a mile you go there. I bet there are more bars on the shipping side than there are on the receiving side.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, they're just waiting, drinking their time away. That's right.
Because you got to make yourself feel good.
Yes, exactly. Psych yourself up to approach the purchasing department. Right. I'm just seeing why alcohol has been such an important ingredient of human evolution, Right.
Yeah. I was doing, I was just wondering that. I said, when did alcohol show up on the planet? As I was going back. So there's all sorts of anthropology people who, have done research where they've come across early settlements of humans, and they've dug down, they find bones. But most of all, what they find is pottery. And pottery is one of the indicators that you've crossed over into civilization, because you're using dirt to actually create vessels. And that's a very innovative. Smart as the smartest monkey is, smartest monkey doesn't create cups and saucers and pots, So, it's a human thing to create. And one of the things they found is that when they find a fragment, it's usually a fragment of a pot, and they analyze it, they find there's always alcohol in the somewhere. So, 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, and I think as far back as 30,000 years ago, when they do the chemical analysis on the most rudimentary pottery, they always find signs of alcohol. And I don't know why, but that made me feel really good.
I wonder if that was just the procrastination, that people would leave their grapes in the pottery and that all of a sudden come back, weeks later, and it's fermented.
Yeah. Don't you have some deliveries today? Don't worry about it.
Oh, that's so
I'm feeling real good. I'm feeling real good now. Don't worry about that.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. You know, they could wait another millennium.
Oh man, that's so funny. That cracks me up. Well, there's I think there's something there though, Dan. That whole that thought of how does that apply to the always be the buyer? Here's
the
receiving doc versus the purchasing department.
Another thought. Our friend Joe Polish, I think, is really on a major thought right now. So Joe, for those of you Dean and I know each other because of Joe, and lots of human beings.
God, you know what I like to point out, Dan?
Lots of human beings on the planet know each other because they know Joe. Joe is one of the great connectors. But Joe has the program Genius Network, which we're both part of, and then he's got another thing that he's really working on. And I can remember the moment that he committed himself to this. It was about 3 years ago at Abundance 360, which is next week for us this year in Beverly Hills. This is Peter Diamandis, up to date, bringing back all of his scouting work of high technology and what's happened to high technology this year. So Babs and I and 18 members of our team will be in Beverly Hills next weekend, Monday and Tuesday. And Joe committed himself to another program, which is called Genius Recovery, and it's for people who have addictions, and it's fairly prevalent among entrepreneurs that they have addictions. And so he said, I want to change the conversation about addiction because the way it's being talked about gets nowhere. There's a lot of spending, but there's no actual solutions. And he says, what I've come to through my discussions with people who really know this world is that addiction is not actually a problem. Addiction is actually a solution. And he said, if you think that addiction is a solution, it totally changes your framework about it. That when people are partaking in their addiction, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be any other series of activities, which are, over a period of time, they're actually negative activities because they don't make you better over time. But in the short term, they actually make you feel better. He said, what is it that an addiction is the solution to? And how it's emerged this year is that there's some sort of trauma experience that is in your past that you can't get a hold of. In other words, you can't learn anything from this experience. It's like a black hole that sucks your present energy backwards into a situation where you've had an experience, a traumatic experience, where you can't get a handle on it. You can't get a lesson out of it. You can't get learning out of it. And so we were discussing this in relationship to the book this quarter, the Always Be the Buyer. And I was saying, I think the best buyers in the world are the people who have actually handled their trauma situations in the past, and they're kind of up to date. And they really would like to work with other people who are up to date and they're not being pulled backward into trauma. And so my thought about this is, and I'm just trying this out, I haven't expressed this before, so I'm just trying it out in you, Dean. My feeling is that all trauma in people's lives, and seems to me that there's an infinite different possibilities of why someone might be traumatized. It all has two qualities about it. It's competition over scarcity, where you were outgunned, you were defeated, where you were competing for a scarce thing and you lost. And it could be scarcity of love, scarcity of attention, scarcity of opportunity, scarcity of reward, scarcity of pleasure, whatever, and you were competing for a scarce thing, and you lost, and it was devastating too. So there, that's I'll plop that on your plate late in the
wow. That's you're saying that's always true, or some is one of the things that could be
no,
true?
I'm just putting it out as theory
it out.
to be tested, you know. Yeah. I'm not saying that I know the truth of this, but it struck me that it seems to be about scarcity, and it seems to be about failure, and there was competition. You were forced to compete because there wasn't a lot of what the reward was. Yeah. So anyway,
I wonder, because I think the way I look about addictions, I think that there's a lot of either like chemical addictions and behavioral addictions.
Yeah.
Which may not be the same thing. I don't know. I'm not a addiction specialist, but I would look at that we're facing right now. I think a place where I would call what we have, just in observing my own behavior, that I think that being online, like, Cloudlandia is an addiction.
Yeah.
I think that there's definitely that. And I think that there's a real case to be made that we're starting to see people are getting seduced up into Cloudlandia and may never come out, I mean, it really, as it's getting easier and easier and easier to not come out. It's really,
that's funny. Yeah.
I mean, listen,
it's defeating the laws. It's defeating the laws of gravity. They're being sucked upwards.
It really is. I mean, we got Philip a Oculus headset for Christmas, right? The new one that's like, super advanced compared to what the very first ones were.
It's like the game out of Star Trek.
That's exactly it. And I'm telling you, Dan, I put that on. He's already figured it out, put the ring fence around where the boundaries are in the thing. But I put this thing on, and I'm immediately, the lobby of where he is, like his home base kind of thing, is this geodesic dome with these huge windows overlooking the Alps and a fireplace in his place and the whole. And you just put it on, and immediately you're transported into this perfect environment. And I'm like, I just know this is going to be a problem. Why would people ever leave this if they?
Well,
if this becomes,
there's an immediate there's probably immediately a tension or a conflict between that and what I call the 4 rules of referability. For the 4 laws of credibility: show up on time, do what you say, finish what you start, and say please and thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's something. I just look at it and
which are mainland. These are mainland rules. I mean, these are not Cloudlandia rules. These are mainland rules.
Right.
And well, I mean, it's interesting. I've really zeroed in on what happened in the 150 years after Gutenberg. So Gutenberg's around 1450, middle of the 15th century. And, all of a sudden, what has been very, very scarce, which is printed material, becomes very, very abundant. Okay. Yeah. With Gutenberg. There were like 40,000 presses in Europe 40 years after Gutenberg. And the other thing that happened, and Stephen Johnson wrote a great book, How We Got to Now, where he talked about how the moment that reading became possible because there was so much stuff to read, everybody found that they were farsighted, and so they had to get lenses. So there were probably an inordinate number of people who were interested in reading who had to get glasses to read it. And but the other thing, that it was a private experience. Reading was a private experience. And for the first time, people would go off by themselves with printed material, and they would spend time. They're having a relationship with the print page. Well, I don't see that any different from what Philip is doing with his, with his Oculus.
Except he's in there with his friends. From school. Well, I mean, this is what's amazing to me. When I was in that, Dan, this geodesic dome, this you imagine the nicest ski chalet type of thing that you could imagine, with the couches and the fireplace and just the right lighting and the incredible views of the Alps and the sense of spaciousness that you have when you're in there. I was observing, literally, he's got a big screen, in there that you could literally curl up on your couch with your headset on, curled up on your couch in your Cloudlandia lair, watching a movie on the big screen in your Cloudlandia lair. And it's just like so many, the ridiculously of
and all your friends are there too, so you're having a party.
But I immediately thought about how it would.
But meanwhile, you're in your bedroom. Meanwhile, you're in your bedroom, and you haven't made your bed.
That's exactly right. And then that's where all the mainland things that are going to happen in support of. I just think
here's what I think, that all the money is in the courier service between the two worlds.
I was just going to say that is really that's the thing, is that the support of all of that, all the mainland things that are, all the assets, all the physical assets in the mainland, it just changes the whole financial service things. But I imagine now that there's going to be a whole new world of resorts within Cloudlandia that are those immersive 3D virtual environments that they'll be able to have a a Soho hotel style in Cloudlandia.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that is that I've had an experiment, and I've kept you up to date on this over the last year and a half, where I haven't watched television for it's I'm in my 18th month right now. And actually, the last time, and I said that I had watched 3 second half of football games, so it was my only actual TV experience. And the last one was the Super Bowl last, end of January,
last year,
parts of February. So it's really been almost a year now since I've done it. And I've really noticed, and I've been getting a little joke in with my workshops, and I said, what I've noticed since I stopped watching television, that the level of conflict and controversy and crises in the world has gone down. I've just noticed that my sense that, that things are getting worse has actually just reversed itself. I think, I've definitely had the experience of things getting better for the last year and a half. And I said, and I just wonder if you've noticed also that the level of controversy and conflict and crises in the world has gone down for you too. And you were wondering why, and it's because I haven't been watching television.
Wow.
That's a joke.
Because you don't.
Right. That's a joke. I want to make sure you realize that was a joke.
Yeah.
But I said it's that they're not hooking me. I haven't been hooked. I haven't been hooked by someone, trying to say this just in, this is crucial. This is, World War III is starting. I said,
that's the whole thing. That's what, exactly.
Well, really over, when Trump knocked off this Iranian general last week, I mean, all the left-wing media. Now, I'm reading this on the internet. I'm just reading their reports. I'm not actually watching their exhortations, on video, but I'm just reading the articles they're writing and everything, and they're really drunk on crises. The media people are. They're totally addicted to crises, and they were hoping that the Third World War would actually break out last week. I mean that would make their day if the Third World War broke out. And they were on the front lines reporting. But unfortunately, the Iranians figured, I guess he's got our number that we can't do anything actually. Yeah. That they have as much energy as they want, and us saying we're going to cut off energy doesn't work anymore. Gee, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out something new. Anyway, we're at the magical witching hour here, Dean.
Well, Dan, it doesn't seem possible, but that's. I always enjoy these. This was a particularly delightful episode.
Yeah, and I think that I want to go a little deeper into the implications of the Oculus world. As we go with this, and does a person actually, if they go in, do they actually lose the capability of coming back out? That'd be an interesting.
And is the world? I mean, that's really. I think you were, and we've had some discussions about this, but it's definitely this bridge between the mainland and Cloudlandia, and I think being crystal clear on there are certain businesses. Like I always think about it from a business standpoint or an opportunity standpoint as an entrepreneur, that there are certain businesses that are only available on the mainland, and there are certain businesses that are only available in Cloudlandia. And I just want to see how that
and the whole point. But I always feel that the money is always made in the in between. I always feel. I always feel if I look around the world that you have the creation of new things, but it's actually in the trading area where you're taking something from one land to another land that most of the money is actually made.
Yes, all the things that there are mainland catalysts that are required to build something, in the cloud. Like even you mentioned AWS, and their physical. We talk about the cloud as this magical thing, but the cloud is supported by physical server farms that are somewhere, right? And that's really
the interesting thing is, I don't know what the numbers are this year, but 2 years ago, this was the end of 2017, the amount of energy, this is electricity, that the cloud was consuming was equal to the global air transportation system. So all the planes every day, the amount of energy that they need. And that was 2 years ago, and they said it grows at roughly 15 to 20% per year, the amount of electricity that's actually used. And it's so funny because I follow the environmental movement, with their solar and wind replacement. Yeah. I said, I hope you have a good solar hobby or a good wind farm hobby, because I have to tell you, it's going to be gas and oil and coal to generate all the electricity that's going to be necessary for all this Cloudlandia activity, the growth of Cloudlandia. It's going to be fracking. It's going to be fracking,
Oh boy.
Unless somebody comes up with the
if you're going to be mad at something, If you're going to be mad at something, it really
you
helps.
can pull a year's energy for your house out of a glass of water. You know, that would be. But Alex Epstein was in last, and he said it gets more bizarre. He says just how much electricity is going to be needed on the one side of people's predictions. Oh yeah, we're going to have 50,000, 100,000 satellites, and we're going to have instant, connectivity, everywhere on the planet. And I said, sounds like a lot of fracking to me.
Oh man, exactly. Great news is if you're going to be mad at something, it helps if it has a name that has really good fricatives in it that you could be fracking. You could
fracking. You could even use it. It's really interesting. So anyway, we've got much to talk about, but I will tell you this: I've just sent you in the 2 PDFs where it's filled in completely, so you can understand the
I got
thing.
them.
And Monday, tomorrow morning, I'll have Peggy send you the blank ones, so you can actually do them for yourself.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.